Johnson's meeting with the president, it doesn't really sound like he's changed his mind on Ukraine. He again reiterated that the border needs to be addressed before Ukraine. So given this current trajectory, what does that mean for Ukraine and its battlefield needs?
I'd also point to what he said about, taking up the issue of Ukraine funding in a timely fashion. He said that right out there outside the West Wing. And we know that he does support funding for Ukraine. He said so himself. We know that the significant House leadership, and certainly on both sides of the aisle in the House, support funding for Ukraine. Now the question is, when you say a timely fashion, what do you mean by that? I can tell you, to the Ukrainian soldier on the battlefront, timeliness is now. It's right now. As you and I just came back from the weekend, the Russians started taking some other towns and villages. Now they didn't, nothing to the significance of Avdiivka in terms of the logistics hub that they want to create there. But they're on the move. This is not some frozen conflict. And so we urge the Speaker, when he says a timely fashion, that he actually lives up to that, because again, to the Ukrainian soldier, the time is right now.
Senator Schumer just said that Ukraine couldn't afford to wait a month or two more for additional funding because it would, in all likelihood, lose the war. Is that the administration's assessment?
The situation's dire, MJ. As I said, the Russians not only took Avdiivka, they've taken a couple of other towns and villages in just the last 48, 72 hours. These guys these Ukrainian soldiers on the front, I mean, they're making some real tough decisions about what they're going to shoot at and what they're going to shoot at it with, and they're running out of bullets. And it's not, as Jake said the other day, it's not running out of courage; they're running out of bullets. So the situation's very dire. I'm not in a position to put a timestamp on it and say, by such and such a date they'll lose the war. But they are certainly beginning to lose territory that they had clawed back from the Russians, and now they have to give it back to the Russians because they can't fight them off.
I'm not asking you to give a prediction, but do you generally agree that in a month's time, in 2 months' time, it is very possible that Ukraine could lose the war without additional funding?
What I would tell you that, as I said to Steve, the time is now, right now. The situation is dire now. I can't predict what it'll look like in a month or two, because I can't predict what the Russians are going to do. But certainly, if, just for argument's sake, if they continue to get no support from the United States, in a month or two, it is very likely that the Russians will achieve more territorial gains and have more success against Ukrainian front lines in terms of just territory gain, mostly in the east, but potentially even in the south.
At what point do you declare the supplemental dead or too late to help Ukraine?
We need it now. I won't even begin to speculate about what would be too late. We're already, in some ways, too late. They lost the town of Avdiivka literally because of ammunition. So in some ways, it's already having a dramatic effect on the battlefield.
How would the United States regard any NATO ally sending troops to Ukraine?
Well, that's a sovereign decision that every NATO ally would have to make for themselves. You heard Secretary General Stoltenberg say himself he had no plans or intentions of certainly under NATO auspices, of putting troops on the ground, and President Biden has been crystal clear since the beginning of this conflict. There will be no U.S. troops on the ground in a combat role there in Ukraine.